Hello, today I'm going to be sharing in quite a lot of detail about my own weight loss journey. So, you know that I've been on a weight loss journey myself and I've lost around 2 stone in 9 months. So, I'm going to talk to you in detail about what happened before that, because there's a few things that have made an impact on how well this has worked for me now. So, that's what the subject of this is. And I'm just going to start off by talking a little bit about what happened during perimenopause. So I'm 53 now. I am probably about a year just over since my last period. So saying I'm in perimenopause, although I know I know a few people have periods after that just starts the whole thing again. But that's where I feel I am at the moment. And I think I probably noticed symptoms from around 46, 47, but probably really didn't think of myself as being in menopause until I was maybe around 48. And I'd had a steady weight climb over several years, maybe actually quite a long time, at least 5 or 6 years. I used to track it on MyFitnessPal, so I've got some quite good data of a chart that just does that. And then that sort of quite quickly over the sort of final couple of years. But my diet was always good. I did have a good routine at home. I knew quite a lot about nutrition, had a lot of protein, a lot of veg, cooked all my own food from scratch, was pretty conscious of carbs. Weaknesses were liking big portions, lots of treats at weekend. I was a very regular grazer. And in terms of menopause symptoms, primarily mine were anxiety and overwhelm. I didn't have anything obvious like hot sweats or bad sleep and I think that's why I didn't really realize I was perimenopausal for so long. I got a really terrible overactive mind, which I still struggle with now, actually. And that made it quite hard for me to deal with stress. I probably overreacted to things a lot. I'm quite a on the go sort of person. So I always think I've got lots of energy. But then I heard about this phrase, tired but wired, where you're almost wired but tired and just trying to do stuff and trying to keep going. And it's almost like false energy at the expense of something. So that's how much that was probably how I would describe myself. I'm very much always putting pressure on myself to work harder, try harder, do more, and all the rest of it. Then, as sort of my head got busier, I noticed that I had a reduced tolerance to noise and background noise. I've been listening to someone cutting trees down all day today. That's been driving me mad. But then I had joint pain. I had a lot of injuries when I was working out. I had quite low exercise motivation. I'd been a runner since I was in my early 20s and just couldn't be bothered. I just stopped. I did like strength training, but like I say, I just kept getting injured. So every time I got injured, I stopped. And gradually over time, my confidence just went because I didn't want to keep pulling muscles and being out of action for 2 or 3 weeks. My sleep was okay, as I say, but I think in a way that was just because I was so exhausted by the end of the day. I just slept really well. And then I sort of think about a timeline of what happened after that. So that's background information, I should say. And I think about, so these things overlap. So it's quite hard to sort of put a chronology around it. So I've got 5 big changes that I'm going to talk you through. Big change one was giving up dieting. And I'd just been a serial dieter all my life. I've talked about this before. And I was just tired of the restrictions, tired of being hungry, tired of the rules, the deprivation. And I think when I go back to look at all my menopause symptoms and just this busy mind, this, stress, it just all was too much. And I just wanted to find something easier and go on an easier path. And that was really what was behind it. So, and that did feel like a huge weight coming off my shoulders at the time. Big change two was stopping drinking. And, I wouldn't describe myself as an alcoholic. I didn't drink an awful lot, but I really felt the pull to drink every night. I didn't, but it was hard work to not drink every night. And I recognized it was quite an unhealthy coping mechanism that I was becoming quite dependent on, because if I tried to not have a drink or do something like dry January, I was furious. It really stressed me out. And I was really, really annoyed that I couldn't drink. But it did give me a lot of anxiety, this battle with knowing I shouldn't, but then drinking, and then saying I wouldn't drink tonight, but then drinking, and then going through this endless loop. And I was going through a period where my life was really stressful. My partner Tim and I, we were in business together. That was collapsing. Then I was we were both out of work. So we literally had no money coming into the house. I did get a job, but then I got fired from that job. That was a nightmare. My dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Then it was COVID. So there was just a huge amount of really challenging stuff going on. So a huge backdrop of stress. And then in the middle of that, I retrained as a personal trainer because that was almost the thing where all of this stuff was happening. Every aspect of my life was changing, and there were things that I was terrified of, like losing your house. And what you realize in those moments was your health is everything. And it's the one thing you really do have control over. So by then I was 48, 49. I'm terrible at time. I'm remembering how old I was at particular in years. So Big Change 3 was a phase then on the back of that where I started to make space in my life. I feel in a way like I had a little bit of a mini burnout, which when I read that list is not surprising really. And I really did feel like my brain start to shut down. And I started this process of just quite consciously actually making more space in my life. I did less, I worked less, which meant, I built up quite a successful PT business quite quickly, but I actually started to take on less clients because I just needed the time. So I was earning less money than I could have done, but it was worth it. And I was happy I was happy with the time. I just needed it. I did a lot less socializing and just had put just much better boundaries on my time because I just couldn't cope with it. I just felt like it was just too draining. Did start to become really conscious of things that drained me, and I just there was just an instinct in a way that I knew I just couldn't cope. I stepped back a lot more. As I said before, I was always this sort of always on doer, felt very capable, feel like I was in charge of everything, the house, the kids, the food. And I stepped back and started to let other people do more and let people help, let things do things their own way. I also realised I was a bit of a busybody. I'd always be interfering in what someone else was doing and trying to offer them help or advice. And I just started to think, I'll just let them get on with it. So did less cleaning, still do less cleaning. It's all right. No one comes around. And in fact, anyone does, we're all the same. You clean when someone's coming, don't you, and not when else, but not for yourself. And one of the things that I remember reading at the time was if you're going to delegate cleaning to other people in your house, you have to delegate and step back. You can't say, "Oh, you've not done it right. Oh, it's better if I do it myself." If Tim or Lucia clean the bathroom, it just gets clean to how they clean it, and I say nothing. I say nothing, and I don't do anything about it. I just leave it. So very much feeling like I was taking a step back from everything and slowing so much down. I felt like I needed a lot more sleep. Like I say, I always found that I could sleep easily enough in the evening, which was at the night, which I was really grateful for. But I started to have a lot of afternoon naps to the point where most days I would go to bed in the afternoon. So again, I was lucky. Well, I say I was lucky. I had a job for myself and I'd made space in that job, so I could do less. And I did go to sleep, and I felt like I needed it. So I was a PT by then. So I was strength training. It was regular, but pretty random, I would say. It was slow, as in I wasn't rushing around. It was slow and it was heavy, which is the right thing to do. I had no real set structure. I ate what I wanted. I enjoyed the lack of stress. I enjoyed the lack of sort of mental noise or guilt about food. So it just felt easy. I was almost just doing what I felt like on the day. And I actually really am happy that I went through that period. And I've still retained quite a bit of that to this day, believe it or not. Around that time I started HRT. It was when all the sort of news was sort of going mad about HRT, and I started to think I was worried about not taking it. I was worried about developing sleep issues or hot flush symptoms if I didn't take it. So I almost took it as a future proof myself more than anything else. And there were times with that, my weight was tending to climb. And there were times when I did do a short-term diet. We went away for Christmas and I had a particular dress I wanted to wear at Christmas and I didn't fit in it. So I went on a 5-2 fasting diet, just to get into the dress for Christmas. But then after Christmas, when I look at my weight, it just went down, down, down. Christmas, and then back to where it was before. And I was okay with that. I didn't even think about it, to be perfectly honest. And I was conscious that my weight was continuing to climb, although I worked in leggings every day, so you don't really notice, and no one said anything. And I felt healthy and I felt happy. So I was generally okay with that. And I knew deep down I didn't really have the motivation to diet. And I started to realize that I had a mental block about it. I didn't really know what I felt what I felt about dieting, about the dieting industry, about the pressure that women were under, the effort that you had to make. And yeah, I was very much in a period of what I almost think of hibernation, letting go of stuff, doing less, making things as easy as I could. And around that time, that was probably when I started to get better at prioritizing myself and really enjoying that feeling of doing less. And Tim and I started going outside more. We started paddleboarding and cycling, and then that led to camping. So it just felt low stress, low pressure. Big Change 4 was really about coming out of hibernation. So if that was like a hibernation phase, something sort of flipped. And I sort of felt that I was starting to get lazy and comfortable. I didn't feel like I was lazy or comfortable before. I felt like I needed the change. I felt like I needed the rest. But it was like now I felt like my energy and my motivation and my drive coming back. And at some point, I started to take a really good, honest look at myself, my habits, what I wanted for my future. I was getting to the point where my daughter was, I can't remember how old she was, but she would have been getting towards being 18. She was 18 this year. So you know that and Tim's boys didn't come around so much because they did their own thing and had their own houses and stuff. So you sort of knew that the future was going to be mine a bit more. And I also decided that to take my health and fitness really seriously. So whilst on paper I was doing a lot of the right things and I was happy in my mind, I knew I was letting things slip. I was heavier than I'd ever been, and I mean ever. And that was a bit of a shock because I think sometimes you can just kid yourself. And it wasn't the weight that bothered me. It was knowing what my eating habits were like and not knowing that was a problem, and not just because of my weight. I realized that was something that was keeping me stuck in a way, because I ate for my emotions. I ate when I felt nervous or anxious or didn't want to do something or to distract myself. And I knew I had to get rid of that comfort blanket, sticking plaster, whatever you call it. And I had to sort of lean into me and what I wanted for my future and start to get out of my comfort zone and do more things. And so that was a big part of it. I wanted to get out of my comfort zone and I wanted to challenge myself. And it's important to know, actually, at this point, that I had the time and the headspace to do this because I'd done a lot of work on that and made some really big changes to my life and my mindset to be able to do that. If I'd have gone through this weight loss process 3 years ago, I don't think I would have been able to do it. So I just wanted to say that because I think that's just really important to know that there's other things that have to change to give you the physical and mental space to do it, but also to be in the right mindset. And, so I had to get my head into the right place before I could do anything. So I started to, I sort of started to get a sense that I wanted to have a good look at things and I wanted to change. I wanted a challenge, but I had to then find the motivation to change because I'd been through this process a lot of times where I'd said, right, okay, you need to get fitter, you need to lose some weight, you need to get your act together, start eating better. 2 weeks later, back to normal. I don't believe in dieting. This is just a normal body for a 50-year-old woman. So I was going into this sort of loop. So I had to really do a lot of deep work. Now, deep work for me is just writing things down and journaling, but it was about really digging in to find the motivation to change, getting rid of the mental blockers, looking for all the mental blockers. It is like peeling an onion. It's that anecdote of, that's why I can't do it. And then you try and then you can't do again. And then you find the next thing. So it was getting rid of all the mental blockers, getting rid of any internal resistance, just hunting it down doggedly to try and find out what was stopping me when I wanted to do something and I started to fail. Why? Never stopped asking myself those questions. And the other thing was I had to take full responsibility for making these changes. It was all about me. So that meant just getting through any excuses, not giving myself the bullshit, not getting in my own way. And one of the biggest things that became a biggest motivator and almost my mantra, actually, that I live by day now, is wanting to get mental strength. I wanted this whole process to be a mental challenge, to get, have visible definition on my body, on my muscles, and be lean enough to see muscles that I'd worked very hard at getting. Didn't do it enough for me to make me want to do it. But when I suddenly had a mantra of being mentally strong, well, that really lit me up. That was a challenge. And that was the thing that I could call on when I was struggling, because there's lots of struggles, even when you've made your mind up. That was the thing that I could call on when I was struggling to get me through the hard times. Okay. And because I knew to go through a process of losing weight, losing weight wasn't the process really. The process was giving up eating in between meals. I knew to go through that process that I would have to put up with a lot of discomfort, that I would have to be really dogged and determined to keep going, even when the setbacks, and not to give up no matter how much I wanted to. Whatever life was going to throw at me, I had to just keep going. And, as I say, what my body was going to look like really was a tiny part. Truthfully, it didn't motivate me at all. The biggest things were getting stronger, getting fitter, and like I said, having the mental strength to actually do it. And by this point, I had gone off HRT, and the reason I'd done, just to give you some context with that, and it sort of, again, it took me a while to decide to come off it, but I'd found the shortages really stressful, and that created a lot of anxiety that you couldn't get your HRT. In fact, I've still got a stockpile. So if anyone runs out, just give me a shout. I didn't enjoy taking it. I didn't enjoy applying it. I was getting heavier than ever. It's not linked to weight loss. Let me just say that. I didn't feel it actually made any difference, because in truth, I didn't have the type of menopause symptoms that HRT is good at, which is the hot sweats and the sleep. So I was taking it for taking its sake, really. I also took quite an in-depth course about menopause, how HRT worked, and also how lifestyle changes like diet and exercise could create very similar benefits. So I found myself in this place where all of the circumstances were right. I had the headspace. I felt like I had my energy back, but I also felt like I felt more confident, and I felt like I had the knowledge to take more responsibility for managing that transition. And that fed into my motivation, because I wanted to see what a 53, or however old, maybe I was 52 at the time, what a 52-year-old body that didn't take HRT could do. But that was almost like my challenge. What could I achieve? And I didn't just want to, it wasn't about being smaller. My long-term goal is to do some quite serious endurance events. That's what I'm working towards. And the underpinning thing, just to repeat myself again, was just this mental strength. And I think I think that is a really powerful thing. And I just want to emphasize that for a minute, because no journey is a linear journey. You take 2 steps forward, you take 3 steps back. The thing that kept pulling me forward was, I know I have to do this. I want to get mental strength. It's with me all the time. And I went into a very specific, dedicated fat loss phase, and it took me maybe 10 months, actually. I put 9 months on my notes, but 9 or 10 months to lose 2 stone. And before, I always wanted to have my cake and eat it. in the sense of I wanted to get stronger, I wanted to get faster, I wanted to do running, I wanted to lose weight. And I just thought, nope, I'm doing one thing. I'm doing one thing only. I'm going to lose the fat first. And then the next thing I'm going to do, I booked a 24-hour sort of endurance event for September and for the following September, which meant I had something to then train for once I'd got through my fat loss phase. And then I was going to focus on strength and the running and the cycling. Okay. And I'm 5'3". I'm quite a small build. My starting weight was 68 kilograms, and I was on around 16 to 1700 calories a day. Okay. Now, and I was doing 3 or 4 strength sessions a week. Each strength session had 5 or 6 exercises. That's all, but they were big compound exercises, primarily like squats, like lunges, like chest press rows, etc. I did 10,000 steps a day, and I did one short run, easy run of about 30 minutes a day, a week, I should say. And that was the structure, and that's barely changed, okay, in 10 months. So that's how simple the plan is, the hard bit, sticking to it. And I wasn't actually counting calories, even though I've given you calories there. Because I just wanted to give you an idea for what that was like for me, that I could lose weight on at my size and my age. And it was a 3-meal-a-day plan with a set, just like the food plan I've given here, a set amount of protein, set amount of carbs, set amount of fat, and just as much veg as I could fit on my plate. Just ate loads of it. And meals didn't vary very much. I had the same breakfast, the same lunches, the same dinners, and it did take a few weeks to get into the routine and the swing of things, but very quickly it became easy, and we got into this great routine, had a sort of a set meal plan-ish. Tim and I shared the cooking. He was doing it as well. So we each had our quantities pinned up on the fridge, so we knew how much we needed. So I might need 150 grams of chicken, and he might need 180, and I might be having 150 grams of potatoes, and he might be on 250. So that's how it looked. So we made food that was easy to fit into that model. So we'd have, fish with potatoes and vegetables, or we'd have a chicken curry with potatoes or rice, or chicken kebabs with naan bread, but it was all, we just knew how much of each we had: fish tacos, chicken wraps, etc. So you have those as building blocks. We varied the veg, we varied the spices. Some stuff was in a sauce, some stuff wasn't. So we just had this very easy profile, plan. But what it was meaning that I was eating almost the same calories, the same amount of protein, the same amount of fat, the same amount of carbs, and the same amount of vegetables at similar times of the day, every day for 10 months. That's what consistency looked like. Just for the practicalities of it, just so you know, Tim ate the same, as I say, so it was easy in that respect that we were doing 2 separate plans. My daughter ate some of it. You could imagine it didn't go down well with a teenager, some of this, but she was old enough to do some cooking for herself, and I made her some things too. So, but we just got by because I was determined. I decided to prioritize myself, and that meant prioritizing myself. She did come second, and it did work really quickly actually for the weight loss, because like I say, I was super consistent, 7 days a week in, week out, and I don't drink. So that did make weekends easy. And when I went out for meals, I did what I tell you to do. I sort of focused on trying to stick to that as much as I could. And, I was fine. Now, so it worked very well. The meals were filling. I never felt hungry, never. So it felt really easy. And it felt especially easy because I hardly ever had to think about food and what we were eating. And I just loved that. I think one of my other menopause symptoms was falling out of love with cooking. I think I just did so much when the kids were younger. I felt like I was never out in the kitchen, and I really did feel like I got fed up of it. So going on to this very simple structured program that we could share the cooking worked brilliantly for me. So I absolutely loved that. So after a couple of months, I started snacking again. So nothing terrible, because I was doing well. I'm being a good girl. I'm losing weight. Oh, tick, tick, tick. I'm sticking to my plan. Aren't you good? So it doesn't matter if you're going to have a bit of yogurt and berries or a few nuts. So that started creeping back in and increasing a little bit. And it was enough to slow the progress. Now, I still made some progress and seeing and feeling the changes. And this is when I talk about the 80-20. You don't have to be 100% perfect 100% of the time to get results. There was some times where I was being 100%, don't get me wrong, but it was still working well enough on the sort of, 80-20 for a while. But then the progress really started to slow, and it was nothing to do with how much I was eating in terms of the plan or how many calories I was having a day. It was the fact I was circumventing that by just having these little extra bits. And because that was almost like my Achilles heel, that started to creep up over time. And I probably went into a 3-month period of just about making some progress, definitely not going backwards, but where it started to feel hard again, because it was the mental battle then that I was in with eating my meals, but then wanting to snack, but knowing I shouldn't be snacking, but then deciding to snack anyway, and then feeling a bit bad about it, and then having we know where I'm going. So at that point, well, I say that point, it took me 3 months of like fighting, fighting myself. But eventually, I realized that if I wanted to make this change and had to go back to my mental strength, I wasn't winning this battle with cravings. I wasn't getting the mental strength to sit through cravings and just eradicate these habits that really didn't do me any good in my life. And so I had to get the journal out, and because I was and remind myself that I wanted to change. I wanted to get rid of the snacking habits for good, because just the fact that I was so attached to food and used it so easily every time something was stressful, it drove me mad. My goal in life was to, and it still is in a way, was just to be able to eat 3 decent meals a day and then get on with my day in between, rather than have this constant pull to the kitchen and this constant urge to eat. Drives me crackers. And I knew that's what I needed to do to be able to maintain my weight and not see sometime in the future that gradual slide upwards. So I got a coach to help me with this. I'm happy to admit to that. If I didn't, I'm saying you need a coach. I need a coach. We all need a coach. It really helps, because this was a really hard challenge for me. I tried to do it so far on my own. I knew what I wanted to do. I had the motivation. I had everything in place that I needed to have. I just needed the accountability. And I tried to get Tim to hold me accountable. That was useless, right? So I got a coach, and this worked at first, but then it was a battle between me and the coach. Me not doing the work I was supposed to be doing and coming up with all the justifications under the sun about why he was wrong and he didn't know what menopausal women were like. And oh God, I used to negotiate a lot for work and I quite like it. So I quite like an argument. So I was full of myself and making my point and being right, until I climbed down off my high horse and I had to think, right, you're paying this guy. Why are you fighting him? What's he doing? What's he saying that's triggering you so much? I sort of came to realize that it wasn't him, it was me. I had to go and eat humble pie, a lot of humble pie. And again, the journal comes out again. It's the thing that saves me every time. And I realized that it was all to do with me trying to hold on to the snacking. It was a defensive mechanism. But he was wrong. I didn't have to do this. I didn't need to lose any more weight. I didn't, I was menopausal. I needed to protect my muscles. It was all nonsense, because it was like a tangle between something that we were fighting over. He was pulling it away from me and I was pulling it back. And when I realized, when I could see past the fight and I could see the reality of the situation, that it was just me in a battle with myself, then I realized I just had to let go. I had to let go of the fight. I had to let go of the struggle. And that genuinely was a pivotal moment when everything changed. And there's 3 hard things to do when you want to make a change, whatever it is, and for whatever reason. 1 is be consistent. 2, sit with the discomfort of the things that you're having to go without, because there's compromises at the end of the day. It was very comfortable, very enjoyable to sit there eating all day in the moment But was it good for me? No. Was it healthy mentally? No. Was it healthy physically? No. I had to be able to sit with that discomfort and sit through those cravings to let them go. And the third thing that was hard to do was get out of your own way, because you will have a battle with yourself when it comes to making these big changes and not letting you get pulled back to familiar habits or things that you've been doing for a long time. And again, once I sort of got back to the essence of this, I knew that all of those things would give me mental strength, being consistent, mental strength, being able to sit with discomfort, mental strength, admitting you're wrong and not fighting a process or trusting a process. It needs mental strength. So my mantra came back in. That's what I was chasing. I was back working towards my goal. So that was pivotal. Then I could just get on with the business of being consistent, doing what I knew I needed to do, and not trying to cheat the system or work around it. So then I became 100% focused on consistency. And that is a big mental challenge, I'll tell you, but I sort of enjoyed it now. I've accepted that I can see it as a challenge. I'm sort of meeting it like that. And, just to give you some insight as well into sort of the program I was on as I got closer to my goal weight, because then I started to sort of see the change. My portion sizes gradually decreased, but that was a slow change. And I only adjusted by very small increments when I hit a plateau. And a plateau isn't something that you see after 1 week. It's maybe something that you see after 2 or 3 weeks of being really consistent. Then you drop your calories. Otherwise, there's no point dropping your calories if it's the snacking that you're doing. That won't make any difference. So the consistency had to come first. I had to let myself get to a plateau, a true plateau. And then, because your body weight changes, you don't need as many calories. And then, I'm probably shaving 100 calories a time of a day. That's all it really takes then to get you into the next drop that you can go along with for a while, until you hit another plateau, and then you're probably taking the equivalent of 100 calories off again. So that's all it is. It's a very slow step down. Yeah, we're trying to give your body as much calories as it can get away with. You're not trying to take too many away. And so I was 100% focused on consistency this time. I completely had dropped the idea of calories. I wasn't really thinking about food. I was tracking how I felt, really. I was tracking my mood. I was tracking how good my sleep was, my energy levels, my digestion. I was tracking my training progression. The weights I was lifting had increased slightly since I started. The goal was protecting muscle loss rather than strength, and I was in a calorie deficit, so I was not going to be making huge strength gains, but my running and cardio fitness have improved a lot, particularly quite recently, actually, and that will be to do with the power to weight ratio. And some surprising things happen that I wasn't expecting. I've become less and less interested in food and calories. I've just seen that in my experience I just overrated it. I put too much emphasis and effort into what I was eating, and I found that I can enjoy really good food and just get on with my life. And I love that. And I've really, really enjoyed the mental peace and freedom from thinking about food all the time. And that is a massive thing for me now. I've enjoyed seeing the progress in my fitness, and the workouts were short. I said I was doing 5 or 6 exercises. So sometimes it takes me 45 minutes. And I had plenty of days off. So it's been a big mindset change when you let go of the struggle and the fight to hold on to as much food as you possibly can and eat as often as you can. There's a really lovely sense of peace and freedom on the other side. And now, because I'm not distracted by that, I'm really focused on what I can achieve physically with my body in the future. And that's where I am now. I'm very much excited about the next stage, which I'm just in now, where it's about increasing my training, increasing the food to fuel the training. Fat loss was the old goal. Performance is the new goal, and that's change 5. So stage 5, that's big change 5. So, and that's the future. of how this new sort of performance orientated stage of the process goes. So that I will keep you posted on in the future. But I hope that's given you some good insight into what it's taken for me to lose 2 stone in 9 or 10 months, what's gone before, what's really important, and what has been the real breakthroughs for me. Okay, thank you for watching. I know this is a long one, but I'll see you soon. All right, bye for now.